What is up, everybody? It is Alex from Heavy New York calling from Zoom again, and this time we are here with Morten of Sirenia. It is great to be able to talk with you. Thanks for coming on the show, man.
Thanks a lot for having me. It's a pleasure, as always.
Yeah, round three. It's great to be able to talk with you for the third time, and this is for the third album in a row that we're talking to. I actually wanted to get this question out of the way because we got Dim Days of Dolor, Arcane Astral Aeons, and Riddles, Ruins, and Revelations, but the new album is simply titled 1977. Why did you decide to abandon the alliteration thing that you had for the last three albums?
Yeah, it's a good question. I'm not sure if I have a good answer, but yeah, I mean, I came with this album. I was, cracking my brain to come up with the correct title. Um, and yeah, at some point I figured that it's it's the alteration. Maybe it was a time to let that go and then and try something new this time. So that it wouldn't be too obvious at some point that it's going to be a new album title like that. So I guess it just felt kind of normal to move on a little bit with this new album.
Yeah. Do you feel that the first two singles that we heard so far, Twisted My Sobriety, which is a bonus track, and Deadlight, is a good representation of this whole album in a way? Or is that just a one little taste of what is to come on this epic album for people who haven't heard it yet?
I think it's primarily a little taste. It's a taste of I would say the most maybe the most melodic uh, aspect. So it's the typical single tracks of the album. And I think there's a lot more in store for the fans who up until now only heard those two tracks. It's I think it's a great album again with a lot of diversity and variation, and so yeah, there's definitely a lot more under the hood that will that will reveal itself as soon as the entire album is out there.
I do consider 1977 in a way be Serenia's most diverse album. I feel like with albums such as like The Enigma of Life or The Seventh Life Path or even At Sixes and Sevens, it almost seems like that there always are like sort of sounds that tie everything together with the album. But 1977, I feel like, is almost like a retrospective of all the different sounds of Serenia. Was that sort of like a preconceived vision in a way, or did it just kind of turn out that way?
I always have kind of a like an idea what I want to do every time I set out to start writing for a new album. But then again, you never know what happens. I might follow the plan for some time, and all of a sudden, new ideas comes to mind. And the longer I work with each and every song, it's the songs at some point start, taking their own life. And it's also as a songwriter, at some point it might become, it's about serving the song rather than just like sticking 100% to what you had in mind from the beginning. So it's always a bit hard to tell. I mean, the basis of what I had in mind is definitely there. I wanted to try to make an album that was very melodic, a lot of good catchy melodies on it. Um, and I wanted also wanted to have especially with the keyboard stuff. I wanted to implement maybe a bit more than earlier, of the 80s and early 90s sounds. To me, this era kind of represents my childhood and my teenage years, and so there's for me, there's a lot of nostalgic um, elements in that, so it gives something a very special feeling to me, when I implement this kind of stuff. And I've been doing it for many albums, and but I think maybe with this album I've been doing it more than ever. Um, but at the same time, I also, like I always do, I always keep in mind, that I want this album to sound like Sirenia, even though it's important to do different stuff with every album. It's also important for me to not step too far away from the like the basic sound of Sirenia or the basic musical concept in a way. So yeah, I think people definitely will hear that this is still Sirenia, but with a new release with some new cool stuff in there as well.
Now, I never like to really ask what the record name means and anything like that. It's a very cliche question, but when there's a year in it or a number, I have to ask it because every time there's a number or a year, I feel like there is some sort of significance with it. I saw it this year with Insomnium's new album. Moonspell's one of Moonspell's recent albums was involved with a year too. I think 17 something. I forgot the exact year, but like, so is there a specific significance behind the year or the number 1977?
Um, yeah, it's always uh, I always find these questions a bit hard to answer in a way because I always wonder how much should I actually say about it and how much should I not say. As also being a huge fan of music myself, and Nick Cave is always has always been one of my big heroes since pretty early on, I would say. And I'm a huge fan of his lyrics, especially. I think he's writing insanely good lyrics. He and Leonard Cohen might be two of the greatest inspirations for me. And But Nick Cave said once in an interview, can't remember. They were asking him about the exactly if it was about the lyrics or the title, but he said, I was probably about the lyrics, yeah, because he said something like, he could spend like something like 5 years, to write the perfect lyrics, and to get all the sentences right and the meanings and the depth and everything, so the listeners then would really have to crack their brains, to try to figure out the meaning behind everything. And then he said he could also ruin 5 years of work in like 10 seconds in an interview, just saying something stupid or not really thought through or whatever. So he was always really hesitant about saying anything about lyrics and titles. And I kind of feel the same way, because it's with people, for example, with this, they see for the title, they see this year, as you said, and they instantly start thinking, okay, what is it about this year and stuff? And there is some kind of mysticism, something there, and I feel if I would, yeah, it's this and that, and then I feel all of that magic, so to say, gets instantly taken away from the title. So I always was, when people ask me, is like I always preferred not to talk about it, rather leave that up to the listeners to have that kind of journey themselves to try and figure out what might be the thing, and sometimes with the titles, it doesn't necessarily have to be something of great significance right there and then either. It could be something that makes a whole lot more sense maybe some years down the road.
Well, does it have any sort of like relationship to Riddle's Ruins and Revelations, being that it is like the follow up to it, or being that again we abandon the alliteration theme that this is more or less, and on top of that too, you released the pandemic pandemonium sessions between that with Mortemia, so like was this more or less kind of like a new beginning for Sirenia?
Yeah, there is no like direct connection, between this new album and the previous one. It's kind of, I would say, more like a natural continuation in a way. Um, but yeah, it's always important to for me to like give each album its own kind of personality and identity in a way. And there is like no, not some specific connection there, no, not really, just for me personally, I think it feels like a kind of the natural follow-up to the previous album.
Um, Being that because I've always thought that Serenia's albums always tell stories from at sixes and sevens to 1977, I feel like your albums are like very cinematic and epic to the point where I always want to know what the story is. I feel like the melodies that are conveyed with the lyrics really do take us through on an epic journey. Does your personal life or your personal experiences influence the lyricism or the sound of the music as well? Or is Serenia more or less kind of like a means of a sort of like escapism where you don't really bring your average everyday life into it?
Yeah, it. I would say both in a way. I mean, everything that happens in my life to some extent inspires me, and the music is the perfect channel for me to take that out. Sometimes people ask me if I'm constantly depressed or something because the sound of the music and everything. Luckily, I'm not constantly depressed, but I mean, it's definitely something that I think most people go through in some period or periods in their life. So it's something that most people can relate to. And for me, um, you know, those periods can be, very inspirational periods, and it's something that I, um, can use my music for to channel that kind of out of the system in a way. And so it's yeah, it's definitely definitely a part of me. I mean, and but also at the same time, it's important to say that I'm not a person that is depressed the whole time. And but yeah, it's many people get that impression, but it has to do with the music that I write, and also the lyrics. I try to find you know compositions and lyrics that pretty much go hand in hand, and if I uh, write, for example, I mean, for me, usually I write the music first, and if I have a very dramatic piece or a very melancholic piece or whatever, and when you start writing the words, you try to find a subject to write about that is matching the music. And for me, it's I like melancholic and dramatic, dark, powerful kind of music. So it's when I start writing something new, it pretty much comes natural to do something with this kind of expression. And then later, at some point, I will have to start writing the words as well. And then it's about trying to find the right words for the feeling or emotions that is already there in the music.
Does it always come from an internal source in a way where you least expect it, or is there maybe almost kind of like a lot of research involved and maybe kind of a lot of external sources of inspiration that you're channeling into your songs?
It can be both, actually. Sometimes a lyric can come very naturally. It can come quite fast, and other times it's like you really have to dig deep, to find the right words, and even maybe do some reading or research, whatever, to get that, those extra details or what you're aiming for. And So yeah, it can be both. Sometimes it's surprising how fast a lyric can come together, and sometimes it can be a battle, that is ongoing for months and months and months before I'm finally happy with the words to a song.
Now, I wanted to discuss some anniversary albums because I feel like that there's a lot to discuss. And the first anniversary I wanted to talk actually is a Tristiana interview because this year or next year is going to mark 25 years of Beyond the Veil, which was really the last Tristania album that you were working with. I know that there was like Midwinter Tears, like the compilations and whatnot. But what was the sort of memory behind the making of Beyond the Veil in a way?
Yeah, I remember. Actually, remember a lot of kind of stuff from that period. I think the album was released in 99, and we started recording. Um, I'm not sure actually if it was beginning of that year or if it was already we started already in 1998. I can't actually remember, but I remember we had something like 10 weeks altogether to do the recordings, and we did first a big session with many weeks, and then we had like a second session. We had a break in between, and then a second session where we did all the last details and that kind of stuff. And I remember, yeah, that album was recorded here locally in just outside Stavanger, where it's pretty much where we live. It's back then we had to take a ferry, and it's not a long travel from where I live. And the studio was the Soundsweet Studios, which was run by my friend Ty Refsnes, who I've also been recording with for years and years with Sirenia, and up until the COVID broke out, and now recently he also had retired from the recording. But yeah, it was very cool times back in the day. It's unbelievable. It's been 25 years already.
Yeah, it's
But
great.
we were pretty young at the time, and and it was such exciting times. I remember, we were so excited about everything, pretty much, and also our debut album, Widow Sweets, did pretty well, so there was a lot of people were expecting already a lot of stuff from us, and we were, of course, um, pushing ourselves really hard too. We wanted to take the second album to the next level, and yeah, it's kind of funny. And I've been listening to the album, like, I don't know, not that many months ago. Sometimes I do it for fun, to bring out an old album that I was a part of, and just listening to it, and even now, as I listen to that album now, I'm still kind of amazed what we were able to do back then, considering how young and unexperienced we were, and all that. So it's definitely it's an album that I'm still very proud of up until this day.
I think it's as much of a classic as anything we've heard by like Nightwish, or like any sort of like a classic sort of symphonic metal, or this sort of like, I really feel like it is a timeless album, and I feel that way about Widow's Weeds. But I'm gonna make you feel even older now, and I do apologize, but and I'm notorious for doing this. But last year marked the debut of Sirenia with At Sixes and Sevens. Last year marked that, and next year is gonna mark 20 years of the sophomore album and Elixir for Existence. So, sort of going from Tristania to Sirenia, how much did your songwriting process change for At Sixes and Sevens, and how has it evolved moving on to an Elixir for Existence?
Yeah, I remember at Sixes and Sevens, the debut. I think there's even some ideas on there that was um, initially written for the next Tristani album, um, but then we parted ways, and I kept some of the ideas that I really liked and I thought would fit into the new concept that I was putting together. I kept a few of them, but most of it was written from pretty much from scratch, and I wanted to do something different with Sirenia. So I was determined to make some changes in the sound and everything. And moving on to the second Sirenia album, I think, yeah, that also feels like a um, very natural follow up in a way. There's a lot of similarities between the albums, I think. And with the third album, we did like a huge change. I remember, but the two first albums feel like uh, you know like natural progress in a way, I would say.
Yeah. And then fast forwarding, because this year marks 10 years of Perils of the Deep Blue, which is actually the first Serenia album I discovered. In a way, I was getting really into like the symphonic metal and the sort of epic metal that you guys have. That's when I really started to get into it. So, Perils of the Deep Blue, what was all that about?
Yeah, that was also a very interesting time. I remember I was experimenting a lot, and I remember I was buying an awful lot of instruments at the time. Trying to just come up with new stuff and forcing myself to learn how to play new instruments and trying to implement that in songs to bring something, you know, totally different there. I can't even remember what I was playing on there, but I remember I played theremin on the album. I played harmonica, ukulele, mandolin, melodium, is it called, something like that? I mean, just a lot of crazy stuff that you normally wouldn't find on a metal album. And yeah, had a lot of fun with that. It was very interesting time, and there's a whole bunch of songs on that album too. I think probably something like 15 songs or something. I think we made like three bonus tracks.
Yeah.
That also was like, yeah, brand new original material. So it was a very long album with a lot of stuff. And yeah, looking back at it, I still really like that album a lot. It's yeah, there's a lot of a lot of crazy stuff on there that is very feels very refreshing and different in a way. So it was definitely a very interesting album to make for sure. I remember having a lot of fun with that, and it was quite challenging too. And I even played a different kind of flutes too on that album. So yeah, it was great fun.
It blows my mind in a way, just like with the whole like symphonic and epic metal like scene between you guys and like Magnus Carlsen, for example, who I consider almost to be like the Dr. Dre of symphonic metal in a way. Like it's just amazing how you guys are all able to really bring in all these different forms of instrumentation when you have all these different outlets, and from not even just writing the songs but just talent behind different forms of instrumentation. Does that almost express a different side of yourself in a way, depending on the instrument that you're playing?
Um, yeah, it's a good question. I think the side of yourself, it might be more or less the same. You're still aiming for the same things and stuff, but forcing yourself to play different instruments, you have a totally different starting point. That's for sure. So I mean, you will naturally come up with something quite different. Guitar is my instrument of choice, my main instrument. So I do a lot of composing on the guitars. Even if I'm composing for a different instrument, I might use the guitar for the composing. But sometimes, I just force myself to, okay, let's put away the guitar for some days, and I'm going to compose on the synthesizer instead, for example. And then, you know easily ideas can come out in a different way, that it would on the guitar. With the guitar, I know my way so well around all the notes and the scales and everything, and it's a very natural way of composing. When I'm moving on to different instruments, I have to start thinking more, and go more into depth, and the ideas doesn't come that fast. I have to work more with them to bring them out, but the end result might be, or very often is something quite different than it would be with the guitar. So I sometimes pretty much just force myself to put away the guitar for periods so that I can work with other instruments as well, and see if I can come up with something totally different, something new, something fresh, and stuff like that.
Yeah, because I interview like a lot of hardcore bands, and like they would tell me how like they're able to come up with a song like in a couple, like in less than an hour, just with the riff progression and all that. But with the style that you guys have, where you have your symphonic elements and your heavy metal elements and just the technical capabilities on there, I know that it takes more than just a couple hours to write a song with you guys. But does that make it a little bit more difficult to sort of capture a moment when you have to work on something for a long extended period of time?
Yeah, I think a little bit of both, but yeah, with so many layers of music, so much instrumentation. it certainly takes time, but I've had it sometimes too, that a song can come together really quick, but then it's mostly the, like the framework, so to say, like drums, bass, rhythm guitars, for example, and then you start working on all the other stuff, and it definitely takes time. And mostly when I'm composing too, I have, a bunch of songs that I'm working on at the same time. So when I come to maybe working on one song and come to a point, and I'm wondering, okay, what I'm gonna do next here, and sometimes I say, okay, let's move on, and I go to the next song and I start working and see if I have some ideas for that one, and so I move back and forth between a lot of songs at all times during the writing process, and I found that it's a good way that works for me doing it this way, rather than if I get to a point with a song where I'm not really sure where to go next, then instead of forcing myself to just do something, I feel it's just better alternative to switch back to one of the other songs and see if there's something there that comes natural, or if I get some good ideas. And so that's pretty much how I do it, with pretty much, yeah, I've been doing that for many, many, many albums now, and I find that it's really, really working good that way.
But in addition, like I feel like a Sirenia for a live show, the setting also plays a role too. Like the first time I saw you was on the Threat Signal tour from 2018, where you guys were playing at the Kingsland, which is a very small venue. It has that good old rusty dive bar effect behind it. But I know that you also played on 70,000 Tons of Metal, and I could see Sirenia play at the Gramercy Theater, which is a Live Nation venue, but I could also easily see you play a show at Lincoln Center or Carnegie Hall or Radio City with a symphony orchestra too. So does the experience maybe change depending on the live setting as well?
Yeah, I mean, it's they're all different settings, and sometimes we play in play smaller clubs, and maybe next week we're playing on an open air festival. And as you mentioned, the 70,000 tons of metal, which is an amazing experience, by the way. So it's it's all it's all the same, but also very different in the same kind of time. And I mean, I really love all of those experiences. I love playing the small clubs where you get really close to the audience, and then you can really feel a lot stronger connection there. For example, I mean, if you play in an open air festival, and the crowd might be like 15, 20 meters away from you, even though the crowd is huge and all that. So I mean, it's all different, and they all have their positive sides, and sometimes you miss little something with something, and but I really love all of those things, all the experiences, from the very small clubs up until the big open air festivals.
Yep. And finally, what I would like to ask you is how the hell are we going to get a Sirenia set list with having so many albums out now? Because you're going to have fans who are going to want to hear deep cuts off of every single album in the Sirenia catalog.
Yeah, it's certainly getting more and more difficult with every album, because yeah, at this point we have so many songs to choose from. So yeah, it's definitely hard to make everybody happy. That's pretty much impossible. I think we come to terms with that now. But we try to set up a fine mixture of everything. We take certainly the songs that are most popular with our fans. Some songs are more or less fixed on the set list, and then we try to always promote a little bit extra of the latest album whenever we're out promoting it, and then we try to pick a little bit of everything from other albums as well, so that there should at least be a little something for everybody, whether they're uh, um, fans of the old era or something in the middle, or or they are been following since recently, our goal is to at least have a little something for everybody in our sets.
Mhm. Well, that's why I asked those anniversary questions. Maybe it helps narrow it down a little bit.
Oh, could you repeat that, please? I,
Yeah,
I
yeah.
didn't understand.
That's why I asked those anniversary questions. Maybe you could do the third. Maybe you could do Barrels of the Deep Blue in full for a tour one day, or maybe at sixes and sevens for an anniversary tour.
Yeah, that would be cool to do something like that, and we've been thinking a little bit um, about something that like that as well. So yeah, we'll have to see when the right time and the right idea, and it's a possibility. Yes, for sure.
Awesome. Well, I want to thank you so much. Just anything else you would like to promote for Sirenia in terms of tours, or what else we could be expecting? If you're allowed to say at this moment, this will be uploaded by midnight. So
Yeah, we have some summer festivals this year. I think four. At this point, we are at four different festivals. I think two of them are already announced, and two of them will be announced very soon, within the next week or two. But for now, I'm not allowed to give that away.
mm,
I think one of them is going to be announced this week, and it's already out there. I think it's a festival in Belgium that we will do together with Amberry and Dawn and a bunch of other bands. And then there will be one more that is coming pretty soon. And we will also go back on tour in September, and starting in Europe first, and then hoping to just continue on in different continents as well.
yeah, we want you back in the U.S. Definitely. It's been a long time.
Yeah, we can't wait. It's been too long already. Yeah, so yeah, we definitely hope to come by the U.S. Somewhere next year. Hopefully beginning of next year or so. So yeah, these are all things that we are looking into at the moment. So yeah, we're excited about that, and really eager to go back to touring again, especially with the long break with the COVID and all that, and things are still not back at normal, but at least a lot more things are going on now and happening. So it seems that we are slowly getting back to more normal times, where it's possible to play more shows again.
Yeah. Well, I interviewed you in 2018 on the Threat Signal tour during the best of times. I interviewed you in the heart of lockdown in 2020 during the worst of times, and now I got to interview you on the way out of it. So, just I think that's a really good inspiration right there.
Yeah. Luckily, it's things are getting better. That's what we need. To have can finally look brighter on the future. Both the touring artists and of course all the metal fans out there. Who wants to see their favorite bands come to town. And play gigs.
Definitely. Well, thank you so much, everybody. We are here with Sirenia. Be sure to check out 1977 coming out May 26th of this year via Napalm Records. This is Alex from Heavy New York, and we will see you next time.